Namaste, students. Let's begin with the Tempest Act 5, Scene 1, Explanation Part 8. In the previous video, we had seen and we had discussed where Alonso reunites with his son Ferdinand and meets Miranda, who's going to be his daughter-in-law. Alonso repents and regrets over his actions, but we see Prospero as a very forgiving character who advises Alonso to forget and bury the past and look forward. All the other courtiers, especially Gonzalo, blesses the couple, Ferdinand and Miranda, and Alonso too blesses his son and the to-be daughter-in-law. Gonzalo says, "Be it so, Amen." This is in response to the blessing that Alonso has for Ferdinand and Miranda. So to confirm that blessing, Gonzalo says, "Be it so." Enter Ariel with the master and bosun amazedly following. So Ariel was sent on a task by Prospero where he was supposed to bring the master, the bosun, and the other sailors who were on the ship at that moment. "Oh, look, sir, here is more of us. I prophesied if a gallows were on land, this fellow could not be drowned, could not drown." So he's seeing the bosun who we had met in Act 1, Scene 1, where he was trying to control the ship in the time of the tempest. And that is the time when he was rude in front of the king. And Gonzalo at that time said that he could see from the face of the bosun that this man deserves to be hanged and he will not die by drowning. So Gonzalo remembers that and he says, "See, I had predicted if a gallows were on land, this man will die on the gallows. This fellow could not drown. This fellow does not have the drowning mark on his face. Now blasphemy that swearest grace overboard, not an oath on shore. Hast thou no mouth by land? What is the news?" So he reprimands bosun here and he says, "You blasphemy. You are as if you are Mr. Blasphemy." Blasphemy is when you speak against God, when you abuse or swear God or a king or somebody in power who is considered to be equivalent to God. So he says, he's calling bosun as blasphemy. Now blasphemy that swearest, you were swearing against grace. Grace refers to king who was overboard, who was on board. Where is your tongue now? Not an oath on shore. Now that you are on shore, safe in front of the king, you don't want to speak up, not a word right now. Hast thou no mouth by land? Have you forgotten, or do you not have mouth by land? Was it only on board when you were swearing against the king? What is the news? He's asking about the news of the ship. Bosun: "The best news is that we have safely found our king and company." So everybody is relieved now. This is in contradiction to Act 1, Scene 1, where they were all in stress and anxious, and in also bosun was seen in his arrogant self because he was trying to control the ship. But now he is happy that they are all safe, they're alive, they've reached the island safely, and the king and the party are all alive. Our king and company. The next good news, he says, our ship, which but 3 glasses since, 3 glasses, 3 hours, glass hour, in the earlier times, the time was measured with the glass. So he says, but 3 glasses since we gave out split. Before 3 hours, our ship had split, is now tight and ready, seaworthy. It's ready to be on the sea again, and bravely rigged as when we first put out to sea. And it is bravely rigged over here. Rigged refers to it's tightly ready, rigged as when we first put out to sea, as fresh, as new, and as sturdy as the time we put out to sea at first. So Ariel, aside to Prospero, says, "Sir, all this service have I done since I went." So he reminds Prospero that he is the one who has done all this service. Prospero compliments Ariel and says, "My tricksy spirit, my clever spirit." To which Alonso, who was listening to the bosun, now the conversation between Ariel and Prospero, of course, nobody could see it except the audience, nobody could hear it. So Alonso, who is still talking to the bosun, says, these are not natural events. They strengthen from strange to stranger. Say, how came you hither? So all these events, first the shipwreck, the tempest, then all of them reaching the island, all of them being safe, the ship being safe in spite of them, in spite of the fact that they've seen it split apart, yet it is safe right now. So he says these are not natural events, they strengthen, they are growing from strange to stranger. Everything seems stranger to Alonso now. So he's asking the bosun, how did you come hither here? Bosun, if I did think, sir, I were well awake. He's trying to recall what happened to him after the tempest, after the shipwreck. He says, if I try to think, I were well awake, I'd strive to tell you. I would like to strive. I'm working hard to tell you, because he's trying to recall all the events. We were dead of sleep. We were dead asleep in just a few moments. And how we know not. He says, we don't know how did we fall asleep. All clapped under hatches. All the men, bosun and his men, were on the ship, clapped under hatches, clapped, locked under the hatches, as if they were locked on the ship. Where but even now, with strange and several noises of roaring, shrieking, howling, jingling chains. So all these noises they had heard. Earlier there was a soothing music that had put them all to sleep, lulled them all to sleep, and later they woke up with such music of roaring, shrieking, howling, jingling chains. Of course, again this music was created by Ariel. And more diversity of sounds, variety of sounds, all horrible. We were awake straight away at liberty, and the moment they were awake, they were straight away free from the ship. So when they slept was the time when they were locked inside the ship. And when they woke up with these harsh sounds, they were free to walk out of the ship. Where he says, once they were all awake from the ship, he says, where we in all our trim freshly beheld, were all in our trim and properly dressed. Trim here means we were all properly dressed, as if no sign of the tempest or the shipwreck from the previous night. They were freshly dressed. The ship was also sturdy. They were dressed trim, freshly beheld our royal, good and gallant ship, and we could see in front of us our royal, good and gallant ship. Gallant, beautiful, huge ship. Our master capering to eye her. Master was dancing. Capering here means dancing, to eye her, to see her. On a trice. On a trice, instantly. Its master started dancing instantly as soon as he saw the ship that was sturdy enough to set to sail again. So please you, even in a dream were we divided from them and were brought mopping hither. So it all seems like a dream where we divided from them. In a moment we were all divided, the royal company and the bosun and the master and the sailors, and instantly now they are brought back again, mopping in a state of bewilderment, in a form of daze. They were all dazed while they were coming out of the ship and reaching the island, and then they meet the royal company there. So Ariel, again aside to Prospero, was it well done? Ariel is yearning for his freedom, and he knows he can only get it if he completes his task with perfection. So he says, was it well done? So Prospero, aside to Ariel, says, bravely, my diligence, it was done bravely, beautifully. My diligence, my diligent worker, thou shalt be free. You are going to be free. To which Alonso continues his conversation with the bosun and says, remember, Ariel and Prospero's conversation takes place aside on the stage where no one else can see or hear them. It's only the audience. Now, Alonso, who is still in conversation with the bosun, says, this is as strange a maze as ever men trod. This island is like a maze. Now, this is a repetition of what Gonzalo had earlier said about the quality of the island when he was first praising the island, and then when he saw the banquet, etc. So Alonso kind of repeats those lines and says, all these events are like a maze, as ever men trod. It's like a maze that ever a man could walk on. And there is in this business more than nature. And all these events, business here refers to all the events, he says it's a doing of more than nature. It's not natural. There is some unnatural doing into this. So he's finding all these events very strange, difficult to believe, and he says this is more than nature was ever conduct of. This is not what nature could conduct. Nature could not manage such events. These are some unnatural, perhaps magical events. Some oracle must rectify our knowledge. Oracle, we had discussed this earlier, used to be people who were seen as messengers of God, who could predict the future. So he says we need some oracle here who must enlighten us as to what has happened, who must help us to understand and give us some knowledge about these events, must rectify our knowledge, must give us some knowledge about these events, he says. So very clearly he is unable to believe what he was seeing, and that is where we will end this video, where they are still amused at the nature of events.